Welcome to the Grandpa Channel, where stories don't fade, they get recorded. I'm Steve Harris. My grandkids call me Rivers. This podcast is where grandpas and grandchildren pull up a chair, turn on a mic, and let her rip. Grandpa stories are chock full of wisdom, life lessons, and frankly, funny as hell. Your stories are the magic elixir to help your grandkids navigate Mr. Toad's wild ride, aka life. Let's Grandpa. Listen up, grandpas. Have you actually pulled the trigger on recording your life story? I'm talking video, baby. They want to remember your corny jokes, your crooked smile, your rugged good looks, and the jaunty bounce of your voice. What if I told you there was a really easy way to do this? Recently, I sat down and I told my life story on video. Not the whole thing, but the good stuff, the messy stuff, the funny stuff, the parts I didn't want to forget and the parts that I did not want my kids and my grandkids to forget. Planted Media made it so easy. They came to me, set up everything, and then they did some editing voodoo magic that made me look like $1 million. Go to plantedmediaco.com and tell them Rivers sent you, and you'll get a nice little Grandpa Channel discount. All right, back to the show. Hello, and welcome to the Grandpa Channel. We have a wonderful guest today, a friend of mine of over 30 years.
I believe so.
Lee Crayk. And Lee, we might have to be really close to the buzzer to kind of bleep a few things. If things get a little out of hand, we might even stop and probably... No.
True.
Anyway, Lee is a remarkable person who loves people. And we'll just kind of let Lee introduce himself. And again, welcome. Lee, tell me your grandpa bona fides. How many kids? How many grandkids?
Well, we have my wife Connie and I. We have 5 kids, and we have 3 boys and 2 girls, and we have 14 grandchildren, and we have been given 3 great grandchildren. With them just the last year and a half.
Really?
So, yeah, so we've got quite a brood that we've got going, and been really blessed up.
So tell me about your dad and your grandpas. Did you know you knew one of your grandpas and then
I
didn't
did.
know the other one?
Both of my parents are only children, so we never had any first cousins or anything like that. But my grandfather and my father's he passed away about 3 months after I was born. He was 48 years old and had some substance abuse issues and things, and passed away at 48. And then my grandfather on my mother's side lived till he was 93, and he passed away because he wanted to.
Really?
Basically.
What was he like?
Well, he was very successful in a business sort of way. I mean, he had a 6th grade education, born in Canada, but he had a work ethic that was intense, I guess I would say. His style was he kind of never looked at anyone, especially his 4 grandsons, but me being the oldest, as we were always grandchildren, always grandkids. And he kind of enjoyed wanting us to make all the decisions that he made for us, and kind of everything that he thought was right. Yeah, a little bit where to live, but I loved him, learned a lot of things from him. He was just interesting in his style. He upbringing was extremely interesting. Well, he was born in Canada, and my great-grandfather was up running some ranches for people in Canada, cattle ranches and different things, and all of a sudden they got tired of that and ended up in California, down in the Los Angeles area. I was born in Los Angeles, as a matter of fact. He was not an extremely religious person at that time in his life, but he was a heck of he was a hard-working guy, and he just, that was his whole goal. He just wanted more than what his parents had. That was a motive. That was a big motive for him. And he had 2 younger brothers, as I recall all the stories about them. And he was different than the other 2 by far. Just a hardworking guy who didn't have a lot of education, but he had a lot of OJT. A lot of on-the-job training, and he knew kind of how to get things done one way or another. He knew how to get things done. So
and that was your mom?
That's my mom's dad.
Okay.
Yeah, my dad was kind of passed around as a child. His parents were divorced when he was very young. And they
Back
had,
in the day when
back in the
divorce
day,
was had a much more stigma. to it.
exactly. And he was kind of passed between his dad's family. In fact, one of his aunts raised him basically in California. He was born in Kansas City, but one of his aunts raised him there. And in 1955, I think, they moved here. My grandparents, my mother's side, they'd had it with California, and they were wanting to get out. My grandmother's two brothers and a brother-in-law had started a business here in Salt Lake City.
What kind of a business?
It was industrial laundry. It's called Quality Linen. They, the three of them had started this, and as a lot of businesses do, they'd run into some capital issues, and so they offered my grandfather a 25% stake in this company, and so he bought in with the express desire of getting rid of all of that. So that's basically was his goal.
How long did it take him?
It didn't take him too long, It didn't. Which caused some interesting family dynamics, on my grandmother's side. It was her, like I say, two brothers and a brother-in-law. That was a hard thing for my grandmother to go through, but that was him. That was my grandfather, and so at the time, my father and mother moved up with him because of, they didn't want to stay down there as much as my grandparents didn't want to stay down there. So they moved up here, and I was born in Los Angeles, and my second brother was born in Los Angeles, but in 1955 they came here, and my father continued to work in the business, but his father died at 48 of a heart attack, and my dad died at 48 of a heart attack. My dad and mom had bought a home right down here on Willowwick, and it was the second home, third home, I guess, that they had owned in all the years that they had been married. They raised us over on Butler Hill over here, and they decided to kind of expand, and they sold that house and had this home built over here on Willowwick, and he hadn't been there too long and had a massive coronary in the home that night.
So how old were you when that?
I was 27, I want to say.
Were you married or single?
I was married. Married, and we had four kids at the time.
So what impact on you did your dad's death have?
It had a huge impact on me, Steve, because, to be honest with you, obviously I was working there in the laundry. I was working there. I was driving a truck, and then I was doing some other jobs that was there. And I'm not really sure. I don't know if I would have stayed there. Family businesses are everything they're cracked up to be. And I think you and I have had that conversation before. And it had a real, it just shocked me. I mean, he was a guy that I thought was in phenomenal shape. He was very athletic. He just had one of those personalities,
Was his personality a lot like yours?
Very similar.
In fact, my kids sometimes will call me Junior.
Yeah.
And I think, I asked Emily one time, I said, so am I a nice mix of my mom and my dad? And she looks at me and she just rolls her eyes and she says, no, Junior.
Yeah, no, Junior. My kids, really didn't ever know him too much, but they were fortunate because Connie's dad and I don't know if Connie's father, and he saved my life, this guy.
How?
I was kind of a lost young man back in the day. I'd had, up until I was about 16 or 17, I had a little different path that I was on.
A little more rugged.
A little bit. Have that? Yeah, rugged. Thank you. I like that word, rugged. A little bit more rugged back in the day, and I had some great friends that were. In fact, one of them now is my brother-in-law, married Connie's only sister. But we were just marching down a different path, and I got a call one day from this guy, and he was a bishop in our local chapter of the religion. He called me and he asked me if I knew who he was. And I said, no, but I know your daughters, really well. And so I was normal in that stretch, but
happy for you.
Yeah. Anyway, he took a real interest in me and changed the path of my life.
So what did he do? Did he haul you into the office?
No, the first time he asked to come see me, I told him I didn't need an interview and thanks a lot. I remember him asking me, he said to me, he said, well, that's fine, but would it be okay if I kind of called you every once in a while and kept track of you? And, and my thought was, I can run this guy off, no problem. I run I've run off several other ones. It's not going to be any problem at all. And I told him, sure, whatever you want to do. And for 7 months, Steve,
Yeah.
the next 7 months,
Yeah.
this guy contacted me every week.
Every single week.
Found a way to contact me
Yeah.
we didn't have cell phones, as you know, back then.
Had to go out of his way.
He had to go out of his way. And I found, my parents were a little bit involved in that as well. But,
Yeah. Were they worried about you?
Oh, extremely. Yeah.
You gave them reasons to be.
Yeah. In fact, I graduated from high school, and I graduated in May, and I was 17. I was the younger one, and I was at Fort Ord in July.
Really?
Yeah, I was, because my draft number was really low, and so I knew I was going. So I signed up for the National Guard, and they took 13 guys, and I was number 13. And so I went. And so I did not do a lot for my personal habits while I was there, but it did a lot for my character.
Really?
Yeah. I call the discipline that was there and everything else was something that I needed. And so, that combined with the interest that this guy had taken in me, which has helped me through my entire life. It's one of
How long did he live?
He lived till, he's just died here just a couple of years, 91 years old. I remember he came to, my wife and I were on an assignment for our church in Peru, and they came to visit us. And I was speaking to this group, and I'm looking down, and my father-in-law is sitting there on the second row, and he's weeping. And Connie's trying to translate because I'm speaking Spanish. And I went down, and I mean, I'd never seen him really like that. And I says, "Are you okay?" And he looks up at me and he goes, "You were worth every minute."
Really?
Got me. You were worth every minute. So I had him, and like I say, he and my own father would have been twins.
Really?
Yeah, they both had that kind of, they like people, man. They which to me is the whole essence of everything.
To me, it is.
You gotta, if you don't love people, you're going to be in for a long grind.
So how does that translate to having kids or grandkids?
Well,
great grandkids.
And losing my father that young, I can remember coming home after another little assignment, and we had our oldest granddaughter born while we were gone, which is kind of an interesting dynamic because we've been away from our grandchildren in different parts of the world several times. But I remember getting off the plane, and I'm 48 at the time. I'm the same age as my dad and my grandfather have passed away. And a few months before that, I had been told in McAllen, Texas, that I had a real significant health issue that could have been really detrimental to my presence here on earth, So, but when I walked off the plane, and my oldest son is holding this 6-month little girl, 6 months. I've been thinking about this I'm sitting there. I get off the plane, and I'm going, I'm going to get a chance. I'm going to get a chance to be what my dad never got the chance to be.
Wow.
My dad never got the chance to, because he'd have been phenomenal.
He probably would have been off the charts.
Oh, he would have been. In my way of thinking, I know he's my father, but that's kind of how he handled us. I had 4 boys, and boy, I'm telling you, we put them through their paces too. I mean, if we had time here, my younger brothers were just horrible, but they're all great now. But I was the angel. Yeah, absolutely. And I was the favorite. But we put him through some trials. But he just because his own family, his own upbringing had been so sporadic and so without any real organization, that when he finally married my mother and was able to have a family, it was so important to him because he'd never had the experience.
Did he spend a lot of time with you?
He did. Yeah, I worked
with working.
Yeah,
was that part of
that?
Yeah.
That was part of that. Was kind of that was. But he spent, when we had 3 children when he passed away.
Yeah.
But I can remember how he used to look at them. He was so excited to have this opportunity. And I had the same exact feeling, Steve, when I got off of that plane. I go, man, I'm going to get a chance. I'm going to get a chance. Yeah. I wanted to be a dad, but in the worst way. And that's probably how I did it, was the worst way. It's the worst way.
There's some things I'd like to have a few over.
Yeah, I'd like to have a few. In fact, I told a couple of my kids I was going to do this, and they said, "Well, I'm glad you're talking about being a grandpa, because Dad, you had some issues being dad." I says, "Yeah, I'm sure I did."
Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, thanks for responding. That was a significant. I can still remember getting off that plane, seeing her, and getting to hold her for the first time.
What did you see when you looked at her?
I saw what I've seen in lots of young people over the years. I saw promise, and I saw opportunity. And I saw a blessing for me to be able to be someone in their life that had confidence in them. and knew that I cared about them, and
Yeah.
and knew that that they had the potential to be what they wanted to be.
So let's turn the question a little bit. Never asked this question before. How do you want your kids or your grandkids and great grandkids to see you? What would you like them to see?
I want them to know that I knew a few things, that I was absolutely sure of some things, and I guess I'll share it with you now. I wanted to do something for my grandkids. You know, I see all these kids graduate from high school, and I mean, they're giving them money and they're giving them computers and they're giving them whatever, you know, but I wanted to do something different, you know. So I came up with this is just me. I came up with, because I'm not well educated like you and everything else. I have a little bit of, you know, I'm pretty street smart. I think some of your friends that know me wouldn't know that. But I decided to, when my grandkids graduate from high school, I write a letter to them.
Really?
I write a lengthy letter and I put it inside a book that I happen to love. And I take them out, just them and me, and I tell them what I've done. And I want them to carry that letter with them forever, to know that when they have some hard times or when they're not sure about something, that they can open that letter and know that there was somebody who knew them and who knew what their value was. And it's been interesting as I've written these letters. None of them have been the same. They're all different, cool. You know, except for the 3 or 4 things that I know in my heart to be true. And I've put that in all of them. But it's been kind of fun.
1 or 2 of them you put in there?
Well, my last one, I just had my granddaughter graduated last May from high school, and she's extremely good at athletics. You know, very good. She became a cheerleader, and she's a great cheerleader. But I always thought she would be a starting point guard on the basketball team, or a golfer, you know, or something that we could really get some scholarship and save her family some. No, anyway, but you know, I highlighted some things about her that were specific to me, that what I had noticed about her ability, how she interacts with her cousins, and how patient she is with younger people, and how they love being around her, and they look up at her as
probably think she's
they
walking
do
on water.
they do yeah, they do. Especially, I've got one, my youngest grandchild is 9 right now, and she just looks at this, Kaylin is her name, and she looks at her and goes, that's what I want to be. That's kind of what I want to be.
Great thing.
Yeah, that's kind of what I want my life to go, is kind of like her. I want to be I want to do this and I want to do that, what she's done. And so,
right.
But I could carry that to every one of them so far that have graduated. And
what a wonderful thing.
Yeah, it's been one of my greatest, if I can use it, spiritual experiences, to be honest with you.
Let me ask you this question. This is kind of unusual, but what have you and Connie done to grandparent long distance? I know that must have been a challenge, but what did you do? Or, I mean, was it hard to do?
It was a challenge, you know. It's been a little bit, because, you know, when we went, we just didn't have the resources that's available right now. But I've heard Connie on the phone, I don't know how many times, you know, talking to one of them, or when we would get together on Zoom calls, you know, on a weekend, you know, and have them all there and asking them, you know, what's going on in your life and what's happening and how's this going, and not waiting for them, but asking them specific questions. Hey, I know this is going on. How's that going for you?
Really?
And
cut to the
chase pretty quick. And I think if you had most of them here today, they would probably tell you that I'm extremely interested in their lives. I've always have been.
Micro level.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah. I've had the opportunity to have to give addresses and different things in different places. I can't even tell you how many times I've called my grandkids and said, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
What do you think about this? Or I'll run into somebody that has known him in a school setting or something else. And I'll, you know, remember this person? Yeah. I says, well, what do you think about, you know, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that, as far as me having something to do with that person, if I would happen to be involved in a marriage or something like that? And it's really helped me.
I'll bet.
Yeah, it's really been insightful that they have. I think you've kind of hit it on the head, and some of the other guests that you've had here, some of the ones that I know really well. I'm just, when I listen to your podcast, I go, I know that about that person. they're always interested in what really is going on in the life of that grandchild. And my grandfather, he was interested to a point. He was interested as long as it was doing something that he thought was the right way to. And you knowing,
way or the highway.
yeah, and you knowing me that we really locked horns, a few times, because it's one of my real defaults is I'm not really good at having somebody tell me what to do all the time. I'm okay when somebody explains something to me and gives me a different insight into something, then I can be open. I can be persuaded pretty well. I can remember sitting with you up in your office up on Wasatch Boulevard here. I think that's about the last time you and I sat in a setting like that. I can still remember what we talked about and how it opened my eyes to a different little something different I wasn't educated on that you were. And so I've tried to do that with them. I look at them and I know they're in my family, but one of the greatest blessings I've had in my life is I've always been kind of youth oriented. I mean, even
you have a young spirit.
Well, I don't think it's hard to change somebody over 30. It's just really this. I've had some experience in trying to change people's ideas and things, and it's pretty tough to do. But you still got some room, for younger people. If they know that you care about them and they know that you've got an interest. I can remember I had two of them one time, and we were living in Mexico and in a setting, and I put these two kids in a place that was pretty interesting, and wanted them to do some miraculous work. And I remember one of them looking at me going, well, what do you think we ought to do? I said, I don't know. It's not my area. I says, but boy, I've got confidence you're going to knock it out of the park. Yeah. You're going to do great, and that's always kind of been my deal. I don't know what you're going to do. All I know is you're supposed to be here, so have at it, and
good luck to you.
Yeah. Good luck to you.
Godspeed.
I can't even tell you how many times good luck to you. You'll be great doing this. But
they look crestfallen.
Kind of. Yeah. I've seen that look on my grandkids' face too. A lot of times. I was just in Alaska a couple of weeks ago. I went fishing with my oldest son, and this was his son and a friend of my son's. There was four of us. And this was not what I thought it was going to be.
Really?
And about 2 weeks before I went, I had given birth to a 12 millimeter kidney stone. I had him, and I had some issues after that, and I wasn't quite over that. This is one of the things that my 18-year-old grandson, who's going to graduate from high school this year, he's with me, and we're in this raft, he and I, with a guide. And when I've gone before, I usually go to a lodge and I can have a nice thing. Well, this one, they dumped us in these boats, and for 6 days, I didn't see another person. We didn't see anybody else. And we're floating down the first day, and I'm with my grandson with this guide in this rubber raft, and I'm still about half sick, And I see this thing walk out into the river, and I think, well, I didn't know they had elk up here, in this part of Alaska, fishing, not for salmon, but for big rainbow trout. And I'm looking down there. And so I tell this guide, I says, I didn't know they had elk here. And he looks at me and he goes, that's not an elk, Mr. Crayk. That's a bear. And so I tell my grandson, well, just relax. The closer we get, and I mean, this thing is huge. And I says, just relax. They know we're here. And he looks at me and he goes, well, I'm relaxed. I says, really? I says, well, that's good. He goes, well, I can outrun and outswim you. I got no problem. I got no problem at all. And, I took that as such a compliment. I'm the weakling. And I took that as such a compliment. And so I was so sick. I better not. Maybe you don't want to be. I packed the wrong stuff, everything. I wore the same pants for 6 days. Never changed them. I changed some other stuff, but I never changed my pants. And so when I came home, my grandson just had a birthday. I could hardly wait. I boxed those pants up and wrapped them up and gave them to him for his birthday. He pulls them out of this box, and these things looked like the last days. And I mean, they were filthy.
Something Jeremiah Johnson wore.
I know. I mean, it smelled like a goat, but anyway, he takes them out of this box, and they were, but to me, it was a bond between him and I.
Yeah.
I mean, we had that for a week, and I just love to have those kind of experiences with my grandchildren.
I love these stories. So I got a tough question for you. We live in really, really, really difficult times. I've had a couple of difficult weeks. I didn't know who the guy that was assassinated. Barely. Well, I knew of him.
My granddaughter was born that morning.
Really?
Yeah. So
oh my goodness.
Day.
I just didn't have any idea, but it took me back in time to when JFK was assassinated, and Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy. And we live in a very unpeaceful and turbulent time. And so how can I, as grandfathers, how can we be fountains of peace for our grandkids? How do you answer that? That's a tough question.
That is a kind of an interesting question. One thing about my own grandfather that I have tried to avoid, but I catch myself doing this, is he was always telling me how much life was so much better when he was a kid. Everything was perfect when he, I mean, according to them. I think your memory kind of tends to go different ways, the older that you get. I think with my grandkids anyway, I want them to see stability in me, and I've tried it. I'm trying
How do
to
you
always
project
tell them
stability, though, Lee?
just from the standpoint of when I'm with them.
Yeah.
When I'm with them, I don't think there's any problem with talking, because you're going to have some different opinions about this. I've got my oldest son is really, I can't even tell you how different he would be than that young man that had his life taken. I mean, they're just so far on the different spectrum of how they view things and how life goes on. But I've tried to give them a sense, and I think that's one of the things I write in all their letters, that here's what really is true, and here's what I would do in your situation, and here's what I might want to be able to participate in given the situation that you're in right now. Because I look at him going to school. I've got my oldest grandson right now. He's come home. He had an interesting experience, going through this mission experience. He had and I'm so proud of him, of what he was able to accomplish, in the situation that he found himself in. But I can see him now coming back, trying to find out what's for me, what's my life, but I think constant reinforcement and telling them that, hey, here's still what I see in you. We went golfing here a few weeks ago, he and I, and my grandson-in-law, we went golfing, and I mean, these kids can just kill me, they can hit it 10 times farther than I can. They can't chip or putt though, so that's helpful, to older guys. But I remember driving down the canyon with him, and I'm looking at him, and I'm saying, okay, now here's what I see in you that you might doubt in yourself. Here's what I see in you. And here's what I see this, and I see that. And here's what I think that you're thinking, and here's what I think how you're going to be able to maybe overcome this little issue.
But to get to that point, you've got to know.
Got to lay the groundwork.
You got to know
who
these kids are.
You got to know them.
And I don't think you can do it long distance. And I don't think you can have mom and dads just tell you that's what the thing is.
No, I don't think that you can do, because one of the greatest things I think is good is watching your kids fail a little bit and letting them fail at times. I think that's something that I think we're losing in this day and age. We're trying to shield all of these great young people. You're trying to shield them from all what you just described, because it's an ugly world out there.
It is.
But you're not going to be able to shield them from all these things. But I think if you can highlight the inner, I look at my grandkids and all of them, and I've got, there's a couple of them that I'm not quite as close to as I would like to be, and that's from a different family situation. But when I look at them, I still see things in them, and I ask for that. I want to know if I had one a while ago. I called her one night. I said, hey, I'm preparing a lesson about this certain thing. I want to know what you think about temples. I asked her, she tells me, she says, I drive out there all the time and sit in the parking lot at night, just sit there. I can't go in, but I sit in the parking lot because I feel safe. It's one of the greatest things I've ever heard, because if you don't think I've used that about 1,000 times, because I feel safe. I feel safe in an environment here that I know that there's I don't understand this whole program, but I feel it, and that's kind of with me. I want them to feel. So I not only have 5 kids and 14 grandkids, I have probably, this is just counting some different assignments that I've had. I probably had the opportunity to have over 3,000 young people go through my life. And if there's anything I've tried to do, and I haven't been successful of all, I mean, I'm sure there's some that go, man, rue the day that I ever ran into
Leave who?
Yeah, that's exactly right. But I've always tried, and I tried to do it here in this area. You've got 2 daughters, one sitting here filming this, and the other one downstairs. I follow her all the time.
Yeah.
I follow her on Facebook. I so much enjoy, because I've seen that in her for years. I can remember I was down at a home where she was sitting, and I'm up there giving my dog and pony show, and I'm looking at her going, she's buying this. She she's on this, she's buying it,
It's
and
pretty remarkable.
yeah, and I've just loved doing that. Like I say, I'm older people. I'm not the best at. I mean, you try. I ran into a lady at McDonald's the other day. I go there. I'm changing those numbers by myself most of the time. But I'll go there all the time and down in St. George. But in here, I went over. There's one in Lehigh, and I went over there. I take my daughter's dog with me. This dog, no kidding, comes down in the morning and knocks his head against our door till I take him to McDonald's with me. So I go take him. But I'm driving through the line, and I get to where they hand you the food, and there is a lady there that looks like the dog's dinner. I mean, she's just absolutely not a lot. Yep. And that she has had a rough go. And so she gave me the bag, and I said, I just want to thank you for always putting a napkin in there. And always, I hate your straws, but I'm glad there's one in there. I did. And I said, I just want to thank you for what you're doing here. And she looked at me with a tear in her eye, Steve. And she said, I've never had anyone even acknowledge me before.
Really?
Ever tell me thank you. Ever.
Really?
You're the first guy in all the years that I've worked here that's ever even said thank. Never had anybody even say thank you, or acknowledge that I exist, is what she said. Acknowledge that I exist. And so that in and of itself, if you can just start with that with your grandkids. When I see grandkids come up to people and they're going, oh, thanks for coming to my game. And I know, man, you could do so much more. I tell people all the time, you need to write them and tell them. Nowadays we have such a great responsibility or great access to their lives. Sending them an email at night. My oldest granddaughter who was 6 months old when I first saw her, and she's just given birth. And I tried to call her, and I knew she was going through it, and she's got another little girl that's almost 2. Well, you know how that is, and so. And her and her husband he's in law school back in Creighton in Omaha, Nebraska, and they're back there trying to get through that. Yeah. Now they've got 2 little kids. So I just sent her a text saying, I'm so proud of you for A, B, C, and D.
You're specific.
Specific in what I see her do and what I've noticed in her over the years and how she's fulfilling all of the hope that I had in her. And I like to do that.
What a wonderful gift.
I don't know. I hope. I try. And I've got a wife that's just very good at it as well. We've had so many young people in our life. And one assignment that we had that would never even get a letter from home. And I mean a lot of them. I'm in Mexico for 3 years, and probably 70% of the young people that we had working with us were Mexicans. Mm-hmm. And most of them not very educated. Most of them just been in this little organization about a year and 10 minutes, and here they are out there.
Here they are.
And they wouldn't get any letters from home, any encouragement. So Connie, my wife, would write them a letter. In her broken Spanish, but best as she could, she would write them a letter and tell them how much she thought of them, and I hope they're having a good week or a good month. I mean, she wrote a lot of letters, lots of letters. For their birthdays, she would make a cupcake and cookies or something, but she always acknowledged. I mean, she was so good at that. And one thing I like too is we have different personalities in our family. I'm telling you, man, we are an eclectic group of people. Starting with me. And if you knew my brother, I live right next door to my younger brother right now in St. George. I wouldn't have done that 20 years ago. I'd never done that on my best day, but now I do, and we've been great to live next door to him. Our family, my own family, and even my nieces and nephews, my own family, every second Tuesday, we don't even live here, and they still get together for dinner.
They really?
All of them. Grandkids, everybody, and they go. And, not everybody shows up all the time, but the vast majority do.
What a wonderful.
And it is, and I'm really proud of them for that. There's something they feel about this unit that they feel safe in. I told you my granddaughter feeling safe. These kids feel safe in this particular unit.
And if the family's working perfect.
They never do just perfect.
No, I tell people when I do wills and trusts, sure, I just say, I'm on a search for the perfect family. And then I'll look at them and I'll say, are you the perfect family? Yeah. And they burst out loud.
Oh, absolutely.
No. I've yet to find
it. Doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. And we all there's all sorts of crazy things going on. Which I think leads me to the final topic that I want to talk about. You and I, our faith is really, really important to us. And I think that it's safe to say that we would love to have our children and our grandchildren, in your case, great-grandchildren, follow on that path and find the same strength and assurance, which I think really is the only thing that's going to get you through these terrible times. It's just the peace through Christ. So how do you share your faith with your grandkids?
Well, one way is in the letter that I write them when they're graduating from high school. I mean, I'm pretty specific about what I know, and it's not a long list. It's about 4 things that I know to be true, and they know that I know. And the reason I know that is they'll call me every once in a while and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this," or "I went here the other day and this happened to me, and I was really happy. I kind of felt what you feel every once in a while, you know." And so there's that. But I think a lot of times too, it's just what you do, you know, how you operate. When they see you, we had my youngest son James, who I was with him in a setting where your faith is involved, and I see him doing some of the exact same things that I did and I do, and the interest. If I can use the word that I'm proud, you know, of my boys and my girls, is that they take an interest in people, and especially people who don't.
Curiosity.
Especially people who the world has forgotten.
Really?
Oh my gosh. My oldest son, I mean, he's working every day with people that are, I mean, the world just as soon forget them as fly to them, you know, they just would. My other sons are very good in reaching out to people that they just know need to be reached out to. They've just got that in them.
Doesn't that make you feel good?
It does. Makes me probably better than, but I see it in my grandchildren as well. I see it in them as well. I see it by what they say and what they do. And when they'll tell me, "Hey, we had this experience the other day. I just went to dinner the other night. They were going to a concert. We went out for Mexican food with 2 of my granddaughters and one of their cousins who is, she's just as, I think just as much of her as I do my own grandchildren. We were just sitting there talking about, you know, life and what they're going through and what they're dealing with, which is totally different than what you and I. It's just, it's a whole different, it's just a different state. But there's some things that don't change. And what you just mentioned there about faith in a Christ-centered deal, which I think we've heard a lot of this last week, you know, which if there's anything good that come out of this, it's that. It happened in our state. I remember our governor saying it happened in our state. It's one of the things that's so sad. Happened in our state and a member of our religious affiliation. But I've seen my children and my grandchildren kind of come back and say, "Okay, here's where my faith lies. Here's I know. I felt it. I need to be reminded of it from time to time and validate their own feelings." That's what I think I really enjoy doing. I like to validate their feelings a lot, especially when I know that they have felt something that is long-lasting, is eternal in its worth.
Do you, as a 74-year-old, 75-year-old, what would you tell your 34 or 35-year-old self looking back, going back in time? What would you say to you?
Move into Willow Creek.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I'm say that in the highest. I really do. I mean, I can remember moving in here with my young family, and we'd been here about 2 months, and I told Connie, "We can't live here. These people are way beyond we can't afford to live here. We can't do this. We can't do that." But thank goodness that we didn't follow that path. But I think it has a lot to do with where they are. And I worry about, I know I see my granddaughter and my grandson-in-law living in Omaha, Nebraska. And I've got another one that's studying to be a dentist, and they're going to go somewhere to dental school, and I don't know where they're going to end up. My ones in Omaha, I see them immediately get involved. You know, they're not sitting back in their house, you know, and hoping that somebody comes to see them.
Knocks on the door. Yeah.
One of the things that's driven me most crazy in my life is people would tell me, "Well, they're just not friendly." Well, I said, "Well, how are you? Tell me what you're doing." I've always turned that question. Well, what are you doing? To help other people not feel like you're feeling right now that you're telling me. Well, 99% of the cases, they're not doing anything. They're not doing anything. This young lady, they've gotten involved in a church level, but they've also gotten involved in their neighborhood that they live in the community. And they kind of step out, and they like people, you know, and they've learned to like it because of the examples, hopefully, of their grandparents and hopefully of their parents as well. You know, they might certainly don't agree with everything that goes on, but they know that there's some stability in the things that they see that we've done because of the end game.
I think stability is underrated.
It is, yeah.
You know, and our mutual friend Jimmy Coltrane would just say, "Show up."
That's
you
right.
know, and
Half of life is showing up.
half of life is showing up. And I think that I love being a grandpa,
Oh,
and I love being a father. But I was taught by my parents that relationships were the most important thing, and they not only taught it, but they lived it. And
being a grandfather has made me a better parent now.
yeah, I feel like I'm a better parent than I was
I'm
back
a lot
in the
better
day.
parent than I was.
Yeah.
You know what? You know, I mirrored my own grandfather.
Mhm.
I never got a chance to hang out. I can remember standing at my dad's casket at 26 years old going, what in the world are we going to do? What in the world are, you know,
And things worked out.
Things worked out. But I had a guy come up to me. I wrote a talk one time about the 5 most influential men in my life. And this guy was one of them. And he'd never been any great church leader or any great business, leader or anything like that. But he came up to put his arm around me and he goes, "You're ready." That's what he says to me.
Really?
"You're ready." And I'm standing there weeping by myself over my dad's coffin.
Yeah.
He comes up to me and he puts his arm around me and he goes, "You're ready."
Yeah.
You're ready.
You feel, I don't know how you feel about angels and things like that, but have you felt your father and your grandfather in your life while you're raising your family? I have too, by the way.
Yeah. My dad, especially my dad.
Really?
I had the opportunity to preside over a temple for 3 years. And I not only had keys of presiding, I could open the front door when I wanted to too. I had keys that I could go in. And there were lots of times, Steve, I would go in there thinking, I want to see him. I want to, they're always talking all the time about all these experiences that they have in these places, and I never did, I had some great experiences in there by myself walking around, and maybe other guys that have had this assignment didn't do that, but I did. On a Sunday afternoon, once in a while, I'd go up there to
just go in,
check things out, just go in and walk around. Because and that's one of the things I would write my grandkids all the time. I want you to know this happened to me here, and this happened to me here.
Well, so you're sharing spiritual experiences
constantly,
yeah,
all the time, all the time. Yeah. And I find my grandkids doing the same things.
Really?
Yeah, they're
back to you,
back to us.
You gotta love that.
I do. In fact, we were talking about one the other night. My youngest son, James, he's got his oldest son who just went to his first homecoming dance this past weekend, which blew me away. I mean, father time has just kicked the crud out of me, But I know, but I'm looking at him, and he's gone. But here a while ago, this is a few years ago, they were home on a Saturday, and he wanted to go play, and all of his friends were kind of gone. And he told his mother he had called a friend from school, and he'd called him and said, he's coming over to play at the house. And my daughter-in-law, who that's another thing I would tell you, I have the 2 greatest daughter-in-laws and son-in-law that you anybody could ever bless me with. They are phenomenal people. But this little guy, he says, "Mom, I got this friend coming over." And so the doorbell rings and he opens the door and there's this friend with his mother. And this young man is a severe albino. And he has no eyebrows and white hair, doesn't see very well, and everything else. And his mother standing there behind him. And he goes in the house and starts playing with my grandson. And his mother says to my daughter-in-law, "I can't even tell you what this means to me today. He never gets invited anywhere. He goes through this and this and this." And my grandson, just as plain as the nose on his face, "Oh, I'll invite him over." It didn't look at anything on an outward appearance. He just knew that this would be good for that. This would be good for that young man. So those kind of things. And if you don't think I acknowledge that kind of stuff, and I've done that not only with my own, but with all kinds of other ones, all kinds of other young people. Been so fortunate, we both have, to live in this area and to see what this area has produced. I'm telling you, I drove through the area tonight a little bit before I came to your home. I'm so grateful that we stayed here. I'm so grateful that I've been able to make the relationships.
You've been here 33 years.
Yeah.
We were supposed to be here, and we've had uniformly wonderful experiences.
Yeah. And just right on this very street, you've got a neighbor across the street that handles some of my finances. But I look at them all the time and go, "Hey, I just knew They're those kind of people. It's just been a great experience.
So, Lee, what would you, as your finale, what would you tell young fathers of young children who will soon be, sooner than they think, they'll be in our situation? What would you tell them? And based on acting like you're Methuselah, old, the ancient of days, but what would you tell them? What bits of advice would you have?
I think of what I told you right there. Being a grandparent has made me a lot better parent right now. But I wish I'd have practiced some of these things before, like we all do. I see in my own children, I see some progress there. I see some things that they could definitely do different that they did, like probably I did. That's not probably the best way to go. I guess the biggest thing I would tell them is you need to understand who they are.
That's a great piece of advice.
You need to understand who they are, because they don't know. They don't. But you need to. You need to understand who they are, where they came from, and what their possibilities that they have.
What they're capable of.
I can remember my dad. This will shock you. I never went to a high school dance. I was the most introverted young man. Oh, I was. I know. It's hard to believe, but it's true. I was extremely introverted. I just didn't have a lot of confidence in myself, which led me to some stupid decisions, But my best friend from about junior high school into high school, we married sisters, and we were both on a different path. Connie's dad helped us both get to
where you needed to get,
where we needed to be. The sooner they know that what their value is, that we're always trying to stick a fire hose in their mouth all the time and give them all our experience in about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
You could have done it this way. But when you recognize one or two talents that they don't think that they have, and you highlight it as a dad, oh my gosh, it's worth its weight in gold.
Lift off.
Yeah. No question about it. And I wish I would have done so much more than that. And not just athletically or scholastically or anything else, but in watching them and what they do. I got another grandson that plays football, and his mother sent a picture into our family thread the other day. He's kneeling, having a prayer before the game. Nobody else is with him, just him. And you don't think I responded to that? How quickly I responded to that, saying, of everything that you might do or any kick you might make or anything else, this is what impresses me more. Because you realize that you're starting to realize who you are.
Right.
And I think we have a 101-year-old leader that if he could tell you the same thing, they don't know. We make sure they know who they are and where they came from.
This is a drop the mic moment with my friend Lee Crayk. Thank you so much, Lee.
Thank you for the honor of
sharing all these wonderful stories. And thanks for watching the Grandpa Channel. That's it for today's episode of the Grandpa Channel. Leave a review, share it with a friend, or better yet, tell your favorite grandpa. We're on a mission to gather 1 million grandpas, storytellers, wisdom keepers, and lovable wild cards. Until next time, keep the mic hot, the memories fresh, and the jokes just slightly inappropriate. I'm out of here.